what I want to do tonight is just to give some academic, maybe international perspective on what is regarded as a good pension system on the one hand. And I will then also touch on what are all the different aspects that policy in terms of pension fund, or I'm not thinking that I will cover everything, but just to talk about some of the aspects that we need to cover in policy. And then I just want to touch on some other countries that have a very specific scheme for the informal sector, a pension scheme. Right, and I think most people tonight have touched on the whole idea of what did we call it? Protection of savings. And what we see from those examples is that very often they offer us an option where you can take your retirement savings, which is supposed to be long-term retirement savings, and you can use it for emergencies. And unfortunately, the international evidence shows that the members are very much in favor of using these funds for short-term purposes. And the different funds in different countries also have different rules, but most of them are relatively lenient in terms of taking your some or even all of your contributions after about a year. And what we have also seen is that in a country like India, where there's not an option of taking short-term savings, it's a very low uptake of these products. Okay, so I just want to, the first slide is just the idea, and you will see two of the words there. It's also in our topic tonight. But this is the Melbourne Minister Global Pension Fund Index. So that is one way of looking at a so-called good pension fund system. So this is a lot of the countries they look at are, of course, developed countries, but they also have a few developing countries in that. So we see it's about adequacy, it's about sustainability, and it is about integrity. Okay, so integrity is mostly about regulation and communication with the members. And we talked a lot about financial literacy, savings culture, explaining to people why it is important to save for retirement. So that is also part of the integrity part. So they put certain numbers down to which they think or they believe is a good system. And like I said, we must keep in mind that this is probably biased towards developed countries, because you will see, if we look at the figures, we are very far from that in developing countries and in Namibia and in Africa. So they say the replacement ratio should be about 70% to have an adequate pension. And we have also talked about the whole idea of, should you take your retirement savings, your accumulated savings, as a lump sum or as an income stream. So their recommendation is at least 60% should be taken as an income stream. And if we look at the sustainability, I think that's the most depressing for me, because if we think about 80%, more than 80% of the working population must be part of a pension fund where they make contributions. And also the labour force participation rate for the working age population, they say should be at least 80%. Okay, so we are very far from that, and we know in most developing countries we have a situation of more and more unemployment and the informal sector, a growing sector of the economy. Okay, so I will skip this. It's just the World Economic Forum that said if we have a healthy pension system, it has a very positive impact on a stable and prosperous economy. And they say the things we should try to do is a safety net for all, so non-contributory, ease of access to well-managed and cost-effective retirement plans. Okay, so that's a very important thing, the cost-effective retirement plans. And then also initiatives to increase contribution rates. So we'll put a system which is very similar It's just basically Pillar 0, where it's a government funded only, and then Pillar 4, which is totally voluntary and additional. Um, so I just want to talk about, from my perspective, what is our ultimate goal with a pension fund system. So in my mind, it's retirement income security for everybody. And the question is that an attainable, realistic goal? And if we look at policy, so there are numerous things that policy can touch on. So policymakers need to make certain decisions, but individuals also need to make certain decisions. And of course, policymakers can either force individuals to make certain decisions, or they can nudge them towards good decisions. And also, where do you concentrate? Do you concentrate on giving tax incentives to employers or to employees? Do you concentrate on a basic safety net? Or do you look at all of them? And I think we must also keep in mind that you can basically look at two phases of savings for retirement. So the one is the accumulation phase, where we build towards our pot of retirement savings. So there's also a lot of decisions to make. Regulation to make it cost effective. Okay, so we know that's not always the case with pension funds, and we have touched on things like needed consolidation in the retirement fund industry. So what is the contribution by government? What is the responsibility of the individual? What is the responsibility of the employer? And the investment policy. So in which type of assets does this fund invest? So on the one hand, it's your regulations, like Regulation 29. Should we change that? Should we consider the economy, the impact of retirement savings on the economy, or should we just consider it, the goal should be purely to provide retirement income security to the members? And the administration costs also have a very large impact on the pot of savings that is available. And then once you reach in time retirement, so how do you withdraw your pot of savings? Right, and in the last couple of years, we have seen quite a few policy initiatives there, of course, in terms of FEMA, but also in the South African regulations, quite a few things. So how and when can I withdraw my savings? So the first question is then, of course, can I withdraw anything before retirement? The FEMA question and the two-pot system question or issues. And then what percentage can be taken in a lump sum? What percentage can be taken as a regular payment? So even if you decide, then you can take 1/3 as a lump sum and 2/3 as a regular income. There are also a lot of other decisions. So in the South African context, there are certain regulations where they say a so-called living annuity, where the retiree has supposedly control over the composition of the assets in which they invest their money. And if you die, you can the money is inherited by your heirs, or you have a lifelong pension, right, where you get a guaranteed income. So should we force people to choose one of these? So if you look at the literature on behavioral finance, and that's also the stance of the South African government, they lean towards encouraging at least people to take the lifelong pension, a fixed annuity option, instead of a lifelong, a living annuity. And yeah, so like I said, long-term savings or withdrawals allowed. So the whole question of mandatory preservation. And I know at our employer, FEMA caused quite a bit of debate. So that remains a big issue. Okay, so if we talk about the informal sector, maybe the most important thing about the informal sector is irregular incomes, and also the perception that all people working in the informal regular contributions. So one of the most well-known one is in Kenya, and that is linked to an informal sector association. So, and what was quite interesting to me, how this has started, they have a drive in Kenya where they encourage people working in the informal sector to go for hearing tests and for ear examinations. And then I started discussions with these people coming to the examinations, and I decided to help them to contribute to a specific pension fund system. And so the key innovation, like I've said, is it allows people to make irregular contributions, small contributions. It's then pulled together, and you are allowed to withdraw. Okay, so in this case, only a lump sum payment. So even if you keep your savings until retirement, it's only a lump sum, so it's more like a provident fund. And after 3 years of participation in the plan, you can withdraw. So there's no penalty for withdrawal, there's no specific retirement age. So the big success of that is to allow people who would not otherwise be able to participate in a pension fund scheme to do that. And there's no need to engage, sorry, my time is up. Okay, so no need to engage with the formal financial sector, which also made it much easier. So my last point, I think I've already said that. So there are similar schemes in Rwanda and in India and in Mexico, but the one thing that we see is long-term versus short-term savings remains a big issue. Thank you.